Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Seth from Engage Podcast. Hope you're doing good. Hope everything is going great. It's Engaged Podcast Thursday, so today's got to be good just because of that, right? All right, I'm going to try to do all these announcements in under 2 minutes. All right, so you watching with me? Okay. First announcement is wherever you're listening to this podcast right now, whether it be on Apple, Spotify, Google, YouTube, hit subscribe. When you do that, you'll get notified every time we come out with a new episode. It'll be right there on your phone. It's easy for you, and that's what we all really want, is we want things to get easy for us, right? Because things are too difficult. Hit subscribe, make it easy on yourself. Also, if you haven't yet, go and subscribe to our YouTube page. The link for that's down in the show notes. If you do that, not only will you get notified every time we come out with a new book review video or podcast episode or whatever, but right now, if you hit subscribe, your name will get put into a random hat. And at the end of the summer, at the end of August, we'll pull a name from that hat. And if your name is picked and you live in the local area, you could become a member of our show. If you don't live in the local area, me and Pastor Anthony will send you a book, one of his favorite books, completely for free with our names signed on the inside cover. I don't know if it's worth anything. I don't know if they'll ever be worth anything, but it's a win-win for you. You either will be a member on our show and your voice can be heard from thousands of people who tune in, or you'll get a free book signed by me and Pastor Anthony. It's pretty cool. So just go ahead and do that. Also, check out our outside services here at Faith Presbyterian Church every single Sunday at 11 a.m. They're so much fun. It is a cool way to do church. Our guest today, his name is John Sarandrea, and I know him through Newcastle School District, but Pastor Anthony knew him as just coach, and he has an amazing story about how he was a firefighter, and it just kind of goes all the way throughout his career. He was a coach over at Pitt. He also got a chance to be, he got a chance to work with the great Jimmy Valvano. And you should have seen Pastor Anthony's face. Pastor Anthony's face was lit up like a Christmas tree whenever he said that. But he talks a little bit about that. He talks about his new step, his new step in his life, which is him opening up a Rita's Italian ice shop, which me and Pastor Anthony went to the family friends event that was yesterday. It opens up today, which is Tuesday, if you're listening to this on Thursday. If you haven't gone and checked it out yet, it is amazing ice cream. You got to go. Custard. It's amazing. Got to go to it. It's in Hermitage. It's right across the street from the Panera Bread in Hermitage, if you know where that is. If not, I'm sure you could just Google it and you'll find it. But overall, this was an amazing episode, an amazing podcast episode. I love talking to John. He was a blast to have. And I know for a fact you're going to get a lot out of this particular episode. So give it up for our friend, John Sarandrea.
We have our limited edition series called Leader2Leader, where we take individuals from the community and we sit down with them, learn their story, and get to learn lessons about life and leadership. And today we are honored to have John Sarandrea, the owner and operator of Rita's Italian Ice right here in Hermitage, Pennsylvania. John, I'm so excited you're here. How's it going?
It's great to be here, Anthony. I appreciate the invite, Seth, as well. Going well. We've had a magnificent summer, weather-wise, so far. It's almost like the tale of two cities where you have this pandemic lurking around, but the weather has just been glorious and beautiful. And, it's, I think if not for the weather, we would really be in a worse state of, being down and stuff, but making the most of a challenge that we're all going through right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
Seth, how are you today?
I'm here. The kids were driving me bonkers. They have to get to daycare by like 9, and so I'm trying to get them ready and also help my wife get ready. It was just, but I'm here. I'm excited. I'm ready for this.
People don't realize that in order for you to get someplace by 9 with little kids, you got to get up at 6.
Yeah.
And start the process.
Yeah.
So you can make it on time by 9.
Exactly.
You know? It's crazy.
Yeah.
I remember those days well.
You remember the days when you'd tell your son or daughter to put on their shoes, and 45 minutes later, they're still putting on their shoes, or in another room, or doing something totally different?
Or like my son today, he's dressed. He walks out of the room. He comes back not dressed. I'm like, "What happened to your clothes?"
Yeah.
And I'm running around the house looking for his clothes.
He did everything in reverse order.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So tonight, when you tell him to get undressed for the bath,
he'll
get dressed
in church clothes.
Right.
That's great.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I'm a summer guy. I like the heat. I know Seth likes the heat. It strikes me that you like the heat. I feel alive.
You know, when the sun is out and you kind of lose track of time, and I love the feeling, even though it's going to sound a little strange, of looking at my clock and seeing that it's 8:30 at night, but it's still light out.
Yes.
And you're thinking it's like 5:30, because we know on the horizon those days come when it's 5 o'clock and it's dark and it feels like it's midnight. And those days go on and on, it seems.
Yeah, I know.
For our listeners out there that are not Western PA people, the reason we talk about the weather like this is because if you get online and Google weather in Western PA, it's pretty much one of the most gloomy places in all of America.
Yes, correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And so if you're out there listening, thinking these guys are really excited because they're seeing the sun, well, you're right, we are.
Exactly. That's exactly, yeah.
No, I just think the sun, it just makes everything better. It just does. You know, you feel alive, like you said. It's glorious. It's when you really look at it, it's just it's amazing. And I think because we go through periods of time when we don't see it, we appreciate it more when we do.
Exactly.
Right? So we don't take it for granted, like maybe they would in Florida or places like that.
So, John, you have a lot of you have an interesting background. I know our paths crossed because I was a student at Newcastle while you were coaching, and we're going to get into that. But one of the things I didn't know about you when you first walked in is you have some teaching in your background, you have some coaching in your background, administrative work, but you had mentioned you were a firefighter in New York City.
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about that, and tell us sort of where you started with work and all the different professions you've had.
Sure. So my father was a New York City firefighter for 40 years, and we came from a community, and I was actually born in Brooklyn in New York, and when I was a small child, at about 3 years old, we moved to a suburb in Queens called Rosedale, and that's where my sister and my brother were born, in that house. So you might say I was probably 20 before I realized there was another occupation other than policeman, fireman, mailman, sanitation worker. We lived in a very blue-collar community. That's what, when somebody asked you, what does your dad do? It was one of those things. I didn't realize there were other occupations out there other than that. So like I said, my dad, he worked 2 jobs. He was a union official and a New York City firefighter. He worked in the Bronx. And I was the first of my family to go to college. And so when I graduated from college, the last thing that I thought I would be doing was fighting fires in the Bronx.
And where did you go to college?
I went to Iona, which is in New Rochelle, New York. I like to tell people that the 2 most famous things about Iona were Jim Valvano, who coached at Iona when he started, and now Rick Pitino.
Wow.
Is now the head coach of basketball in Iona. So 2 iconic names in basketball in that little small town in New Rochelle. It was also recently a very big hotbed of the coronavirus in the beginning in New York. If you remember, they would mention New Rochelle in New York was a huge hotbed when it all started to come to fruition, late March, early April. And then if you're old like me, you could remember New Rochelle from the Dick Van Dyke Show. Have you ever heard of the show? Mm-hmm. Probably never seen it, but they lived in New Rochelle in New York.
That's right.
It's a neat place. So anyway, that's where I went to college. I went on a baseball and a basketball scholarship. And when I graduated with a teaching license and certainly wanted to teach. And I remember one day my dad said, "Hey, I want you to take the fire department exam. I want you to take the written part, and then shortly thereafter, you'll take the physical part," which was really demanding. So I said, "You know what, Dad? I don't want to do that. I know what I want to do. I want to teach. I want to coach. But if that was what will make you happy, and as a tribute to you and how you raised us, I'll take that. But I'm telling you right now, I'm not going to do that." So took the written, and then I remember this like it was yesterday. Took the day came for the physical part of the test. It was 8 o'clock in the morning. It started. I had a baseball game in Iona on that day.
To coach?
Yeah, no, I was playing as a player at the time. I was 20 because I got called to go on the fire department before I was 21. Couldn't take the job until I was 21, but we'll get there. I said, "Dad, I'm not going to go take the physical." He said, "You're going to take it." I said, "No, Dad, I'm not going to have a game tonight." And he said, "Listen to me very carefully. You are going, and you will take it. You'll make your game, but you're taking that physical." He made me go, and I went, and still insisting along the way that, I'm never going to do this. So I don't know even why we're going through this. Well, as life would have it, I was teaching in a Catholic high school in the Bronx in New York. And they called me to be a New York City firefighter, and I debated. But the beauty of being a New York City firefighter is you can work your schedule where you work for 24 hours and then you're off for 3 days, and then you work for 24 hours and then you're off for 3 days. Or you can switch days for nights, 15-hour night, 9-hour day. So I was able to get 2 bites of the apple, if you will. I would teach during the day, coach in the afternoon, work in the firehouse at night. And I ended up being a New York City firefighter in the Bronx for 8 years. Many a night. You might say I was a tenement fireman. The community that I served was 6 and 7-story tenements, apartment buildings, no private houses, very few high rises, but very much a city, very much an urban area, very diverse. A lot of Hispanics, but Hispanics from Central America and South America, as opposed to Puerto Rico or Cuba, where most of the New York Hispanics would come from, as opposed to if you lived in the South, then the Hispanics you'd be exposed to, a lot of them would be from Mexico, So immigrants, hard workers, poor, very family-oriented, extended family, very important in the Spanish culture. That is the community that I serve. And many a nights, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, when we get called to a job, as we called it, I'd be sitting there with the nozzle in my hand, flames and smoke popping out of the door, thinking to myself, what in the world am I doing here? Mm-hmm. Are you out of your mind? Mm-hmm. We're about to go in there. Everybody else is leaving. It's the most unnatural job in the world because everything innate to you tells you to be afraid of fire. Even the mice are coming out of the building, and dogs, and of course people down the fire escapes. But you have to fight that innate instinct, and we're going in where everybody else is going out. So it was an amazing experience for me, and I did it in one of the top five busiest firehouses, not in the country, in the world. Wow. So my father, who more or less forced me to do it. I'm so glad.
Was your dad retired at this time?
No, he was still a fireman. He was still one of the higher chiefs in the job.
Were you together?
No, we were not. He ended up moving, transferring to Manhattan. So I remember when I went on the job, it's a funny story, and my dad assigned me to one of the busiest firehouses in the whole city. So if you're in the busiest firehouse in the whole city, you're in one of the busiest firehouses in the whole world in New York City. My mom didn't talk to him for a month. because he put me there. But again, wisdom of knowing the job and having life experience. The way you learn the job is to go to a place that you're going to be exposed to a lot of different things, as opposed to a quiet place somewhere where, you had a fire maybe every, month or two. We were hopping and popping every night of the week. So I did that for 8 years. I taught full time in a Catholic high school. I coached basketball and baseball at that same school. And I was a New York City firefighter for 8 years. So you might say that I got 2 bites of the apple. I will tell you that I would never have left that job, the fire department job, and very few people do. In fact, in New York City, many police officers will leave the police department to become a fireman, but never the reverse. Never the reverse.
Why is that?
The police department job is a difficult one. I think you know that today. In current time, vital job. Have the utmost respect for those first responders, but tough job. Dealing with the public in a very, very difficult way. The firemen show up; they're the heroes. They're going to save the day.
That's right.
Pulling babies out of burning buildings.
You saved my dog.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Got the cat out of the tree. The whole drill. But police unfortunately have a different image, especially in certain areas in certain parts of town. I'm not saying it's deserved. I don't think that is. In every walk of life, you have great teachers and some that shouldn't be in the field. You have great people of God and some that take advantage of their position in ministry. Same thing with the police department. You have guys that are really recognize what it means to be a public servant, and others that are on a power trip. And I've run into both, and there are people like that in all walks of life. But many would switch over. New York City had 60,000 police officers when I was there, 15,000 firemen.
Wow.
So, big numbers. But there's 60,000 police officers in New York City at the time. I think it's in the 40s now. But that would be somewhat of an unhappy breed because the job was just so hard. When I started, they were 2 in a car. Then it went to 3 in a car. Now sometimes it's 4 in a car. And how you see in our area where we live, it's 1 in a car. That would never happen in a place like New York. You can never be alone. Difficult places, working in tough places.
I want to have a couple questions.
Sure.
Talk to us about the brotherhood of the fire department. What is that culture like, being on a squad where, like you said, when everyone else is coming out, we're going in?
Yeah.
Because it's part of that going in, I can only imagine, is my team's going in.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Talk to us a little bit about that.
So you make a good point when you use the word team. You have my back, I have yours. Different than on being on a basketball team, in the light of the worst that's going to happen is you're going to lose a basketball game. You could get killed in a fire. Guys have died, floors have collapsed, ceilings have come in. 100 things have gone wrong. We're all familiar with 9/11, and 343 firefighters died on that day, and the collapse of the World Trade Center. That's just horrific stuff. But you absolutely positively rely on each other, from the guy who's hooking up to the hydrant in the street to make sure that you have water, because your water is your lifeline. Without that water, that fire will come at you rolling. You have no defense to get it. The guy who backs up the guy on the nozzles, or you can lean on him, and he takes the water pressure, the heaviness of the water pressure off of you, so that you can concentrate on fighting the fire. The guy who's third in line, who's making sure that there's no kinks in the line, so that you have the maximum water pressure in order to fight the fire. So one of those guys unable to perform their duty impacts the whole ability of getting in there to put out the fire. And then, of course, you have the guys that are in the truck who don't have the hose to go in with, and they're doing the searches and things after we knock down the fire, or even before. So, they're all dependent upon your ability to get in there, knock that fire down, and let us get in and make a search, or we're coming out real quick, and they'll tell us where the fire is located. So a brotherhood personified. We eat together, we sleep together, we risk our lives together, we celebrate Christmas together, we celebrate Thanksgiving together, we have Christmas parties in the firehouse together. So it's a family. It really is a really, really strong bond and family. That's why firefighters call each other brothers. They do. There's been a number of books written referring to firefighters as brothers. And even though I only did it for 8 years as opposed to the 40 my dad did it for, it's an experience that really shaped me into who I am and what I am today. My respect for life, my respect for teamwork, my respect for people who live in tough neighborhoods and who come from nothing, from another country with nothing, and work their way up and to having something and appreciating it like a lot of us Americans. We don't always appreciate, we've been born into good, and we've had good parents, thankfully, and each year it gets better, but that's not the case for everybody. So many lessons learned from those guys, and I'm still in contact with them today. Technology is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
I've hooked up and communicated with people that I haven't seen in 30 or 40 years, and you're able to pick up just right where you left off with them, which was kind of amazing. But that's an experience I'll thank my dad for forever, because it left up to me alone, I wouldn't have done it.
Right.
So
before we get into folks that inspired you,
yeah.
So tell us how you got from there to here. There was, I mentioned earlier about being at Newcastle.
Yeah.
Tell us the other sort of things you're involved with professionally.
Sure. So in 1988, my basketball team in Tollentine High School in the Bronx won the New York City Basketball Championship, the New York State Basketball Championship, and then we finished number one in the USA Today rankings. And as a result, I was bestowed the National High School Coach of the Year award by the USA Today. And as a result of all that exposure and great season, and again, going back to some people we'll talk about who had an influence on me coaching-wise, I received 8 different offers to coach at the next level, Division I. And I decided to take the offer from the University of Pittsburgh, which is what brought me to Western Pennsylvania from New York. So in 1988, I left my family in New York and moved to Moon Township in Western Pennsylvania, and became an assistant basketball coach and recruiting coordinator at the University of Pittsburgh under Paul Evans. That's a name from the past. He was the head coach of the University of Pittsburgh for 8 years. You probably will remember him for coaching David Robinson at the Naval Academy, and Charles Smith and Jerome Lane and those guys at Pitt. Sean Miller, who's now a big coach. And ironically enough, there was an opening at Pittsburgh for me to fill because John Calipari left to become the head coach of the University of Massachusetts. Now, John Calipari today is the head coach of the University of Kentucky. So I've had a lot of exposure to good guys. Like I said, when I was at Iona, Jim Valvano was the basketball coach, and I got to be his graduate assistant for 1 year.
So you met Jimmy V?
Oh yeah, spent a lot of time with Jimmy V. Lots of time.
I feel like we need to have you back for an entire podcast on this year.
I could talk about the year, because it was only a year that I got to spend with him. A lifetime of stories. And,
we gotta now. You and I are both talkers.
Yeah.
So we have to be mindful of time. We have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
But give us the 30 seconds nugget of working with Jimmy V.
Okay, so my favorite Jim Valvano story was, it always pertains to the fact that, the nightlife in New York City is all night, okay? The bars in Western Pennsylvania, if you will, they close at 2. Everything's open till 4. When you were young, around that age, you wouldn't think of even going out yet until midnight. Whereas here, you're just getting home. That's just a different place. So Jim would be the last one home every night and the first one in the office in the morning, and we never really quite understood how we would do it. And he would call you about 6 o'clock in the morning, and he'd say, what are you doing? And I would say, oh, hi, Coach. Geez, I'm sleeping. And he'd say, well, I'm up. Which was kind of your cue to, you better get up and get to the office, too. And I'm like, oh, my goodness gracious. Didn't we just go to bed like an hour or two ago? One of those things. But my favorite story about Jim Valvano would be entitled Fame is Fleeting. And he used the example of the football coach. And he said the football coach just finished 10-0, and when he walked into the banquet hall, he was greeted with a standing ovation. And there was so much adulation in the room that he actually had to quell the crowd. And once he did, they finally sat down, and he began to speak, and he said, I want to thank you all for the tremendous support that you've given us this year. But there's one thing I need to know. If next year we should happen to finish 5-5, will you still love me? And the most prestigious Booster Club member in the room said, of course we'll still love you, and we'll miss you too. So true. In college sports and college athletics, what have you done for me lately? 10-0 was last year. You know what I mean? What have you done for me lately? It kind of was a story for him. They won the national championship, and then 2 years later, a little bit of scandal at North Carolina State for him, and then he ended up having to step down. So a great lesson about fame is fleeting. Don't get too carried away. Or as you and I talked about earlier, biblical principle at play there. Pride goeth before a fall. Don't take yourself too seriously. Be humble. Be thankful. Be gracious, as opposed to walking around when you're on top, because the good Lord will give you a little reminder every now and then. Yeah. He postures us every now and then when we need it, and that's a good thing. But so many stories, like you said, Anthony, you and I could do a story for hours. Just we could call it Jim Valvano 101 and just go on and on and on. But he had a profound, like my father, Jim Valvano had a profound impact on my life and coaching and philosophy and he had a zest for life that Bronx guy, family grew up in the Bronx, a lot in common, and then he was one of those guys you aspired to be like in many, many ways. Give you the shirt off his back, a little bit wild at times, but a lot of fun to be around, and just a charisma about him that was infectious. He recruited Jeff Ruland, who ended up playing for the Bullets for a number of years. It's a small Iona. Jeff Ruland was being recruited by Kentucky and Louisville and all. And Jim Valvano was so persuasive that he actually convinced 6'11" Jeff Ruland to come to Iona. And that kind of put Iona on the map. That he was always one of those guys that would be able to sell a snowball to an Eskimo, right? So to speak.
Very cool.
Good dream builder. Put the vision out in front of you.
Yeah.
And then, you could really start to see, hey, that's me. I want that. I can dream that, So he actually got me my first coaching job at Tallentine. And here I was, a little snot-nosed 21-year-old, 22-year-old coaching at one of the top high schools in New York City against some of the most legendary coaches. And man, I'll tell you what, I learned the hard way. They gave me a good beating in the beginning. But I learned from the best. I really did. And I knew if I was going to be able to compete on that level, I had to start going to camps, and I had to start going to clinics, and I had to pretty much live the game 24/7, which I did. And I learned, I got a bachelor's degree worth of education in a short period of time.
So then you, jumping back to Pitt.
Yes.
Then from there, Newcastle?
Went to Pitt for 4 years, correct. Interviewed for 2 head coaching jobs, one of them Iona, finished runner-up there. Met my wife-to-be when I was at Pitt. She was a student in dental school and a Newcastle girl. So we got married. I stayed an assistant at Pitt and commuted back and forth from Newcastle for a year. And then we decided we were going to go in a different direction and leave the transient life of a college assistant basketball coach or even a head coach. And she was going to open up her dental practice in Newcastle. And then I was going to go back to being a high school teacher and a coach. And that's exactly what I did. I got lucky. The basketball coaching position was open in Newcastle. I took that first. Then a year later, I got an English teaching position. That was my, I have an undergrad degree in English and a master's degree in English as well as in education. So taught at Newcastle, coached basketball there for 15 years, and then decided to go the educational route, became the assistant principal at Newcastle Senior High School, and I went back and forth as a half-day principal at Ben Franklin and a half-day principal at the high school. So I was running like crazy.
Busy.
Yeah, it was. I'm glad I only did that for a year, and then I became the full assistant at the high school, and then shortly thereafter the principal, which I stayed as for 10 years. Wonderful years at Newcastle, formative years. My children were born during that time. They allowed me to coach and be the principal at the same time, which was also wonderful. We had some really wonderful accomplishments. And, you know, when you work in the community's public schools, you see the best that the community has to offer, and you see the toughest that a community has to offer. You celebrate the great times with the people in your community, and you also are really knee-deep in the tragedies that take place, whether it be the loss of somebody very, very young, tragically in a car accident or an overdose of drugs, or you know, somebody going on to be accepted to an Ivy League school, or getting a scholarship to Ohio State to play football. I mean, it runs the gamut in a community. So all of those things. I'm blessed to have been involved with thousands of a generation of Newcastle students over the years, over the 15 years I was there. You know, 10 as a principal and 5 coming back as superintendent. So in 2007, 2008, I kind of hit a crossroads. I felt like I was done with coaching. I was being called to do something else. And, you know, coaching I'd done for 30 years and felt like, you know, if you took that away from me, I would have no identity. Like, oh my, you know, who am I? You know, I'm a coach. Somebody yell out, coach, you turn around. People didn't call me by my name. They just call me coach. And now that's going to go away. Wow, how do I feel about that? But I took the leap. I became the superintendent of schools in Sharon, PA. Did that for 6 years, 6 wonderful years. That's how I wound up moving to Mercer County.
Okay.
And then after 6 years, my boss at Newcastle retired as superintendent, and then I was able to go back and take his place, and I did that for 5 years, and retired. And you know, you hear these stories all the time. A few months into my retirement, I had a massive heart attack, and I had quadruple bypass surgery.
Wow.
Lost 40 pounds. I was much bigger than I am now. I'm in a better place now, you know, as far as weight goes, but that's not the way you want to do it. Really sick. In fact, I will tell you that the surgery was very, very difficult. I had to be paddled. I was in a coma for 10 days.
Wow.
I suffered liver shutdown. I suffered kidney shutdown. I had to go on dialysis. I was in really, really bad shape. So only by the grace of God, did I come out of it. Because the doctor told my family that they give me about a 25% chance to live. And when I came out of it, I had to, you know, go through intensive therapy and learn how to walk all over again. Couldn't walk, couldn't do anything, you know. Bathroom in my hospital bed in my room was right over by your fax machine and your phone. It might as well have been in Hawaii. I couldn't get there, couldn't walk, you know. I mean, it's hard to believe that, think that way, but I couldn't get there. I had to learn how to do that all over again. So anyway, when I started to go to rehab and started to go to my cardiology appointments, doctor said to me, you know, John, I told your family that you had about a 25% chance to live. And I said, I know, they told me. He said, I want you to know that I was being generous, that your chances were much less than that. So I know a lot of people who have, are very, very strong along their walk with God and whose prayer is anointed, prayed hard for me. My pastor is Pastor Joe at Believers Church in Warren, Ohio, and I'm very close friends with Pastor David Young, who's in Newcastle, and Teddy Sad, who's in Newcastle, and these people were constantly by my bedside. Laura Adams King, I don't know if you know Laura. She's the superintendent of Farrell School District and pastors her own church in Franklin as well, Dr. King. But all of these people, praying, and family members praying, and, amazing story. And I will share this with you. I came out of my coma on the anniversary of my mother's death. Interesting. Now, my mother had died 5 years earlier in church on Easter Sunday. She had an aneurysm and died in seconds. 7 o'clock Mass, Easter Sunday in New York. Boom. You want to talk about being raptured right up to heaven.
Wow.
But I just thought it was ironic. I know my mom was really lobbying Jesus,
Sure.
I have 2 handicapped children who I'm very close to. And you spend a lot of time with them. One of the reasons when we get into Rita's, reasons why I opened the Rita's up is to teach my sons and my daughter entrepreneurial skills and teach them how to run a business and to learn how to work for themselves, because I'm retired. I needed to do this like I needed a hole in the head.
Before we get into Rita's,
Yeah.
how has that experience that you just talked about? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
How have you changed? How has that shaped you?
Anthony, that's a frequently asked question, and rightfully so. And I'd like to sit here and tell you I lived recklessly and I did this and now I've had an epiphany. And, I have always been a believer. I've always been a Christian. I've always tried, not without challenges and not without, backsliding, to live my life as a Christian. And I've always been thankful and appreciative. My dad used to teach us that you won't meet a product that has a shorter shelf life than gratitude.
Wow.
So he always taught us, gratitude has a short shelf life. And kind of like what Valvano said, fame is fleeting. What have you done for me lately? Always be grateful, especially in good times. Most especially in good times. You know how we all kind of like run to God when the chips are down, and then when everything's good, we kind of keep them over here. I'll call you if I need you, kind of speak. And we live our lives that way. And I'd learned that in my walk in Christianity, and as I went from a baby Christian to more of an adult Christian, that you always have to be thankful and grateful, and you always want him by your side, and you always need his counsel, and you always have to pray before you make big decisions and do things that, you know what I mean, and then you won't go wrong. So I'd like to say to you, I changed, but am I more grateful now? I'm so grateful that I've been given an opportunity. I have prayed intensely, trying to understand why. I want to know why and what it is that you want me to do, that you've given me this opportunity. You know what I mean? I know there's a reason. I think I know the reason, but I really want to know clearly. So I pray. When I pray, one of the things I pray for is that vision and that clarity as to why I was given a chance, because I had the Widowmaker. 85% of the people get that. Asymptomatic.
Wow.
No symptoms. Went to the gym that day.
Wow.
So has it changed me? Yes. Am I thankful for every day? Yes. Do I no longer sweat the small stuff. Do you know what I mean? I used to be very emotional, pay attention to detail, sweat every minute, dot every I, cross every T. Now I'm not as serious. I am a little bit more, don't take things so seriously. because, we could go like that. And one of the things, probably the most sobering line in the Bible that anybody could lift is this: come into this life with nothing, and we leave with absolutely nothing. Can't take anything with you. I'm not taking the Italian ices and custard with me when I go, that you all have to leave here.
Right.
So don't sweat that stuff.
Talk to us about Rita's Italian Ice. How you spoke a little bit about the entrepreneurial component. Give us the vision. How did it come about? How do you want to see that thrive in the community here? Yeah.
So I've never been a guy that was going to retire and just sit on the couch and.
We're really shocked by that, aren't we?
Oh yeah.
I would never be that guy. I just wouldn't be. I can't. It's just not in my DNA. And my wife teases me about it all the time. I thought you were gonna. I said you should have known.
Are you a pacer?
Yes.
I'm shocked by that as well.
Yeah, I'm a pacer. I've always been a pacer. In fact, when I'm on the phone, when I talk on the phone, I have to walk.
You're burning holes through the...
I am. Wearing the carpet out. Some of the best basketball players that I've coached, believe it or not, at halftime, they pace. They don't sit, they pace. They're so wound up and so fired up that they walk in the locker room while I'm talking to the team. And just let them go. Let them go. They're intense and focused, and you go. You be you. So, talking about Rita's in particular, there's a place in New York called Ralph's that sells Italian ice only, not Italian ice and custard mix like we have the ability to do, and it's all year round, and everybody loves it. It's a New York staple, but the business concept of Ralph's is they make their ices all in one place and then they satellite them out. So you can't be more than 2 or 3 hours away from Ralph's and own a franchise because the ice wouldn't make it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At least not in the state freshness that they want it to be in before they sell it. So we have a saying at Rita's, make it today or throw it away. So everything we make that day in the shop in the morning. And at night, whatever we don't sell, just before closing, we'll give out samples. Hey, I want you to try green apple. You never had that before. Or here's a black raspberry. Then maybe next time you'll say, oh, you know what? I had that black raspberry. It was great. Now I'm going to try.
What time do you close? I need to know when to show up for all the free samples.
So Anthony, after today, I'll invite you and Seth to. We have our Family and Friends opening on Monday, this coming Monday, from 6 to 8:30. I want to invite you guys to come. Okay. It's going to be a big taste testing opportunity. Rita's has 64 flavors of Italian ice and over a dozen flavors of custards. And what makes Rita's unique is there's custard ice combinations, root beer and vanilla, root beer float, mango and vanilla, creamsicle. And all the other combinations of chocolate ice and bananas, banana ice and chocolate custard, strawberries and chocolate custard, strawberry ice. Great combinations, dozens and dozens of them, including all of the different drinks and what we call a concrete would be similar to Dairy Queen's Blizzard. All of those things we have. If you come up and look at the menu, you'll see we have 16 or 17 flavors of Italian ice daily. And we also have at least 2 flavors of sugar-free as well for people who... and what's nice about the ice is if you're lactose intolerant, you don't have to worry about it.
Right.
Of course, the custard you can't have, but the ices you can. And then we have some cream ices, too, that... you have to stay away from too if you're lactose intolerant, but they're very, very good, like a mint chocolate chip, cookies and cream. Those are ices, but they're cream ices. Really cool. But anyway, looked into Ralph's, really liked the concept, couldn't do it in Western PA. Did some more research, found out about Rita's. The more I looked, the more I liked. And I got my daughter involved and my 2 sons involved and my wife involved. And the more we saw, the more we really, really liked the company. We really, really liked the business plan of the company. Rita's gives you the option to stay open all year round, or you can be open from March 1st to the end of October. So you have to open for a minimum of 8 months, but you can be more than seasonal. If you have the Ritas, there's 700 Ritas in the United States. If you're in a warmer climate, obviously you're going to stay open all year round.
Yeah.
Here, we're still debating that because we put a drive-thru in. So even if it's not, I don't know about you guys, but I don't stop eating ice cream because it got cold out.
Yeah,
I still have it. So, but I'm not going to go to a walk-up window to get it, But I will come through the drive-thru. So we have that. Also, if you look at the way the pandemic is playing out, people, you can easily socially distance with the walk-up window, and if you're not comfortable with that, you can just stay in your car,
Right,
and drive through. That's
That's easier with kids too. Sometimes, like you said earlier in the beginning of the show.
Sure.
You got 17 kids at home.
Sure.
Taking their clothes off. It's like, let's just go through the drive-through.
You don't have to take them out of the car seat. It might be too hot. It might be raining. You might not have enough time.
Right. Or if they're just in a good mood when you leave.
You're 100%
Now you're
right.
there and you're going, there was a meltdown. We're just going through the drive-through and we're going home.
You make an excellent point. The number one, the research bears out that the number one customers of Rita's is a mom and their children. That's your target market. So, and they come with their kids, and we have nice places to sit outside with music, or if it's too hot, or we don't have enough time, or it's going to rain, or I don't feel like getting 3 out of the car seat, you come right through the drive-thru. And ices are great. You can eat them by yourself. They melt in the cup as opposed to all around the cone and all over your pants.
Yeah.
Even though we have custard. Custard is a little bit different than ice cream. It's very thick, it's delicious, and it melts more slowly, so it's not as messy. I invite you guys to come up and
Yeah, definitely.
for that on
Definitely
Monday.
will.
Please come. So anyway, all my life I worked for somebody else. I worked for the fire department, City of New York. I worked for the Catholic High School. I worked for the city of the public schools in Newcastle. I worked for the public schools in Sharon. I admire these people that have their own business, that have to get up with their own skin in the game every day and get it done. You know what I mean? 50% of the country, I've come to find out by watching the news and listen, 50% of the people who live in this country that are employed own their own business. The other 50% work for, the church or the state or, whoever. And I've never known that side only other than to patronize or whatever. So I wanted my children to have skin in that game. I wanted my children not to have to work for somebody else. I want them to work hard for themselves and their family and learn that way. So I started this business primarily for my youngest son, who's got cerebral palsy and he's in a wheelchair. Because he's at YSU now and he's very bright, but there aren't a lot of things that he's going to be able to do, but this is going to be one of them. He's going to be able to manage, and my oldest son is going to be able to be the move this, let's get that, the guy that's mobile, and the two of them could be a great combination. So ultimately, I'm hoping, vision, like I said, we all have to have vision or we perish.
Right.
And whether or not that vision comes true or not, it remains to be seen. Ultimately, we'd like to own multiple Ritas, in our area, maybe in Ohio, maybe in another part of Western PA, as we tackle the learning curve of this one. And, it's not rocket science. It's ice cream and ice. It's really good stuff. People love it. It's a lot of money. You know what I mean? Big investment. A little scary because, I've never done this before. I managed a $60 million budget in Newcastle. I managed a $45 million budget in Sharon. But that was taxpayer money. This is my money now.
Right.
It's a little different.
Tell everyone where you're located. If they want to find
Rita's
you.
is located at 2393 East State Street. If you're familiar with Hermitage Square Plaza, where Giant Eagle is, and TJ Maxx, and there's a brand new Gabe's, and Big Lots and Ollie's is coming in there now too. We are right next to Arby's, right in front. As the owner of the plaza calls it, he said, "John, you're on the 50-yard line of Hermitage."
There you go.
And we are, and it's a great thing, and we're excited, and we want to make people happy, And Steve Jobs, I'll end with this. Steve Jobs said, if you want to make people happy, don't be a leader. Sell ice cream.
There you go.
I love it. That's awesome.
Seth, do you have any questions for Mr. Sarandrea?
Yeah, I just have one quick one, and that is, so as an outsider looking at you, and then just hearing your story too, I see a lot of success and overcoming roadblocks that were put in your way.
Yeah.
But can you tell us a time where you tried something and failed?
Oh, sure.
And then overcame that?
Yeah. So, I think it's important to know that kids of today, who are the adults of tomorrow, are going to have multiple jobs in their lives. It's going to be 10 or 15. We might have had 2 or 3. They're going to have 10 or 15. They're a mobile group. They're going to jump from state to state and company to company for multiple. They're going to lose their job here. They're going to get another one here. They're going to get promoted here. They're going to go there. They're going to be a hot commodity here. They're going to go there. So all my life, I had my life mapped out. I was going to be the coach of Tallentine. I was going to be the coach of St. John's University. And then I was going to be the coach of the Knicks. Didn't happen, right? I got to Tallentine, and I went by way of Pitt, but I always wanted to be at St. John. But I think the hardest thing for me was not getting a head coaching job when I thought I should have gotten one. I interviewed for Manhattan College, Division I school in New York. I interviewed at Iona, finished runner-up for both. Really, really deflated. Really felt like I was by far and away the best candidate. Through my lens, right? Through my eyes. Obviously, the decision makers, they didn't feel that way, right? So that was really a bitter pill for me, because that's the first time I had to deviate from my plan. You know, and then I learned, and there's a great line in the Bible. It's just a few words, but it's one of the most powerful. Man plans, God laughs. Are you familiar with that one? Huh? Man plans, God laughs.
Yeah,
in other words, your plans don't mean a thing.
If you want
my plans are the ones that matter.
If you want to hear God laugh, tell him your plans.
Yes, isn't that the truth? I love that. I love that, because, you know, it's not the plans of men that matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, he knows the plans that he's made for you, and his plans for me were different than my plans for myself were. And you know what? If I had to do it over, I'd do exactly the same. I'm the father of 2 handicapped children. As much as I'd like to think of myself as a blessing to them, they've been 10 times that blessing to me. 10 times that blessing to me. And how they never complain and have everything and every right to complain and never do. Really make you look in the mirror and say, what's wrong with you? How could you possibly complain about something that, you know what I mean? You know how we do sometimes?
Sure. Well, it's about perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, and God is the great giver of perspective. He really is. He's he'll give you, he can see things, you know, in a way in which, with God, all things work out for good. I could tell you another 100 stories. I don't know where we're at time-wise.
We do have to be mindful of our time, but I do have another question for you.
Go ahead.
And so I sent you some questions, but I don't send them all.
Yeah.
Because I like to put you on the spot.
That's okay.
And this is just a fascinating question, and I like to see what you'd say. So,
did I answer your question, by the way?
You did.
Yeah.
You did. Awesome. Thank you.
You are sitting here, and you're able to get in a time capsule and go back in time. And you run into your old self.
Yeah.
What do you say to him? What advice do you give? What do you say?
Oh, you know, that's an amazing question, because of what I've been through in the last year, having to go back to go, so to speak, learn how to walk all over again, and give you a lot of time to think about what you would have done differently. And this answer might be a little bit different than and less profound than you're looking for from me, but I will tell you this. I would greatly emphasize in the worldly sense, the making sure that you're mobile and you exercise. Vitally important. The body that God gave us is meant to move. Everything functions better when you're moving. So physical fitness and movement and walking and activity and vision and is a blessing and a gift that you have to take full advantage of. Treating your body the right way, like what you put in it. Okay? I'm not talking about drugs. I never did those. I never a big alcohol. I haven't had a drink of alcohol in 20 years. Just don't drink. Doesn't do anything for me. But I've never been a good eater. You know what I mean? And I formed really bad eating habits from a very, very young age. And then when you have to change those, it's like smoking, right? You smoke for 30 years, you get sick, you get something wrong with your lungs, now you got to stop. Oh my God, it's pretty hard to do. When you have to change your eating habits in the middle of your life, after you're just used to shoving anything in your mouth that you want, it's hard to do. So be mindful. Be very mindful of what you eat. And treat your body. You know, you can do it. You can have things that are quote unquote not great for you, but everything in moderation. Do it in moderation. Don't eat 10 hamburgers or 7 hot dogs from Coney Island. Eat 2 and enjoy it and be glad you were able to eat the 2. And then the last thing is I'm really, really, really blessed and thankful for the parents that I had. I had magnificent parents. My mom has passed, as I told you earlier. My dad's still alive. He's 85, lives with my sister in New York. And that's a blessing. Not everybody wins the parent lottery, as you know. Some people have, they don't win that lottery. I like to call it a lottery because you don't get to pick your parents, right? You guys didn't pick your parents. No, you get what you get.
Right.
And you're really blessed if you get good ones. And I had fabulous ones, and I want to make sure that I'm as good a parent as I possibly can be. And what does that mean? It means we understood the value of family. They passed that on to me. They understood the value of faith and how important it was to understand that unless you have God in your life, you're never going to be satisfied, and you're always going to be searching for something worldly that will never be able to give you the peace and the happiness that you need. If you don't have a relationship with Jesus, if you don't have one, it's like wandering in the desert. But when you do have one, and I've watched people go through so many trials and tribulations, worse than me, but have a great relationship with Jesus, and that the peace that they have and the ability that they have to get through things by His grace. I was taught that from an early age, and if you're not equipped with that in your life, there's really a big piece missing, and it's really something that you need to go on a search to get, and you never regret it.
I think that's a great way to end our show today. I want to thank you on behalf of Seth Walters here at Faith Presbyterian Church. This has been a great conversation. I learned a lot. Some things I didn't know. You blew me away, and I tell you what, I think our listeners have a lot to appreciate after this conversation. This is Engage Podcast with our special limited edition series. We sat with John Sarandrea. Get out there and enjoy the Rita's Italian Ice, and we will look forward to our next episode. I hope you all have a blessed day.
Thank you all.